Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third virtual public hearing of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality, and Diversity. I am Lisa Morris-Julian, the Vice Chairman of the committee, and I will be chairing the procedures today. Good morning to this honorable virtual assembly. I count it as a privilege to sit as chair for today's proceedings as we address this very important issue of an inquiry into the human rights of socially displaced persons in Trinidad and Tobago, with specific focus on their treatment and relocation from Port of Spain public spaces. It is my sincerest wish that we continue to engage with much needed productive dialogue in addressing this major issue of social importance that not only affects capital city of Port of Spain, but every single constituency of this fast developing nation. The plight of the homeless, we will all agree, speaks to the very heart and soul of a nation's ability to care for those who have become displaced and seemingly castrated from our normal civilization. Nonetheless, what we are assembled here to address directly affects every individual in this country. I myself, as a former local government representative and a former mayor, can definitely speak directly to this very situation that has surfaced even in the beautiful borough of Arriba, as I'm sure that each and every one of you can attest in your own constituencies. I believe and I am confident that once we create, build, design a framework that can properly and effectively help this major issue in our nation's capital, then similar templates can be created throughout our learning and alliances to treat with the homeless and street dwellers in each and every constituency. Therefore, I must say again, I feel extremely privileged and humbled to chair this morning's JSC with its wide array of brilliant representatives from all the major stakeholders and institutions called together on this matter to help and harness a successful strategic implementation plan. I want to thank each agency for their very valuable contribution, which continues to guide us in urging the best approach forward as we flesh out the continuum of care for street dwellers into a beacon of hope for a beautiful capital city and the less fortunate that depend on our care. I thank you very much. Members, please also allow me to announce that Senator Donna Cox, Minister of Social Development and Family Services, will be recused from this morning's proceedings, but she's very much present and we will all be taking in your valued contributions. We will start with the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, and I'm requesting that you introduce yourselves. The members, may I ask you to introduce yourselves before we move on to the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services.
Nahi, independent.
Jillian John,
MP Barry.
Opposition Senator.
MP Barry Padrat, member for Princess Town, opposition member.
Good morning, everyone. MP Esmond Ford, Tunapuna, member.
Senator Cox.
Donna Cox, member, recused from this meeting.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, and we're requesting that the chairman introduce everyone. Sorry, the PS. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Joint Select Committee. My name is Jackie Johnson, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry. I have here with me Ms. Jennifer Dutaram, our Senior Legal Officer, Mrs. Lorraine Reyes-Borrell, the Executive Director at the Social Displacement Unit, and Ms. Lisa Eiffel, our Senior Planning Officer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now move on to the representatives from the Ministry of Health.
I'll start again. Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Hazel Othello, Director of the Mental Health Unit in the Ministry of Health. And with me today are Ms. Marsha Connell, Legal Advisor 2 in the Ministry of Health, and Mrs. Keisha Lewis, General Manager, Mental Health Services at the Northwest Regional Health Authority.
Okay, thank you very much. We now move on to the Port of Spain City Corporation.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I am Anna Stapleton Seaford, CEO of the Port of Spain Corporation. With me this morning is Superintendent of Police, Mr. Glenn Charles, and Mr. Mr. Sukral, Public Health Inspector 4. We have in the gallery Senior Superintendent Wayne Mohammed of the Northern Region of Municipal Police Service. The region spans from Bigamatin to Sandon and Shawanas.
Thank you very much, Madam CEO. We now move on to Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Please. Hi, good morning. My name is ACP Sharon Cooper, representing Criminal Division. Here with me also is ACP Gafar. ACP, he represents ACP Northwest. Here with me also, we have our legal advisor, Sergeant Terrence Dick, and we also have our Ms. Shireen Pollard, representative of Director Social Services for the TTPS. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now that we have all the representatives this morning, I would like to advise the listening and viewing public that the inquiry's objective is to examine the treatment of socially displaced persons in the relocation from public spaces in Port of Spain in particular. I would like to ask the following persons to make brief opening remarks in this order. Ms. Jacqueline Johnson, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Dr. Hazel Othello, Director, Mental Health Services, Ministry of Health. Ms. Annette Stapleton Seaford, CEO of Port of Spain City Corporation. And finally, Ms. Sharon Cooper, Assistant Commissioner, Acting of Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Thank you very much, and you may proceed.
The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services is responsible for addressing the social challenges of poverty, social inequality, and social exclusion. The social issue of street dwelling continues to present a daunting humanitarian challenge that affects a discrete number of individuals across diverse economic and social backgrounds in our nation. To this end, the ministry, through the services of the existing Social Displacement Unit and the full suite of other services and programs, remains committed to the rehabilitation and restoration of the street dwellers. We duly recognize that the efforts of the ministry in isolation were not and has not been sufficient to address the problem. Therefore, we have been working with stakeholders and our other partners to develop the range and scope of services within the continuum of care for street dwellers. We are confident that the right coordination and collaboration among the key stakeholders will bring about definite solutions and positive outcomes for addressing street dwelling. The ministry looks forward to today's discourse to explain in greater detail those intervention measures which are currently in place and planned for in the near future pertaining to the nation's socially displaced. We remain committed and guided by the recommendations of the Joint Select Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Othello. Please unmute your microphone. Dr.
Oh, they mute you back. Good morning. Again, I take this opportunity to reaffirm the commitment of the Ministry of Health to the provision of treatment and care for the socially displaced within Trinidad and Tobago, and in particular, persons within the city of Port of Spain. Our ministry continues to partner with our sister ministry, the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, and other entities to provide support in the treatment and care of these persons. In particular, the ministry continually provides technical guidance and support as it relates to the management of street dwellers who appear to be mentally ill. This collaboration includes the assessment of street dwellers who are believed by mental health officers to be mentally ill and in need of care and treatment in a psychiatric ward or hospital, and their admission to a public psychiatric ward or hospital when this is required. It also includes visitation to various current and proposed sites that offer services to street dwellers to assess suitability and to provide technical recommendations, in addition to a number of other initiatives. In this regard, it is envisaged that today's proceedings will be insightful towards promoting effective monitoring, timely mental health assessment, and where needed, treatment and greater care of socially displaced persons towards better health outcomes for them. I thank you, Ms. Chairperson.
Good morning to all. One of the mandates of the Port of Spain Corporation is to ensure that the city is clean at all times. On the other hand, the health, safety, and well-being of all citizens and members of the public who traverse the city on a daily basis is our utmost priority at the Port of Spain Corporation. Despite our challenges, which include mental health training, a vehicle to transport the homeless persons, and accommodation to house persons as required, the Port of Spain Corporation is always ready to work with our stakeholders, specifically the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services and the Ministry of Health, to provide immediate response and services in the areas of policing, public health, and sanitation on a continuous basis to assist where necessary to curb homelessness in the city of Port of Spain. I thank you and we look forward to this presentation.
Thank you, TTPS.
Good morning again. As law enforcement officers, we respect and protect human dignity and maintain and uphold the human rights of all persons. All police officers are part of and have a duty to serve the community without discrimination. The TTPS continues to partner with organizations and NGOs to assist the socially displaced community. What we looked at in Port of Spain for the period 2017 to 2021, we have 8 persons who were categorized as socially displaced persons, 81 persons, who were categorized as socially displaced persons were charged for varying criminal offenses. Also for the same period, we have 17 persons from that same community were victims of crime, one of which was as a result of a homicide. From our belief, we feel that these figures were significantly underreported because of the community involved, which is the socially displaced community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before we begin the questioning by the committee, I would like to remind all committee members and representatives to direct the questions and concerns through the chair. I would also like to remind that both members and representatives to please mute your microphones unless acknowledged by the chair. Then you activate the microphone and turn it off as soon as you have concluded your contribution. And members, I would like us to begin. And I'll invite Member Thompson Ahi to begin the questions.
To the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, through you, Madam Chair, P.S. Johnson. Welcome and thank you for your paper that you've submitted to us. Very good, happy to see familiar faces among you, all of those who are here this morning. Now, given that the Port of Spain City Corporation, in their submission, cited a lack of space in institutions, and that they've seen it as a challenge with regard to addressing the street dweller population. Could you please identify the institutions where street dwellers are placed at present, please? Madam P.S. Johnson.
Madam Chair, through you, there is a process that we employ to treat with street dwellers, which requires an assessment of the individual based on their voluntary decision to be assessed. And that determines where they are placed. Now, the ministry has been engaged in the identification of several facilities that we can use to provide transitional and emergency housing for street dwellers. 2 of them are on stream to be utilized shortly for that purpose. In the interim, what we have located at the Nidec car park is what we call the Social Displacement Center. Now, there's an assessment center there, and persons who are assessed as mentally challenged, of course, will become the responsibility of the Ministry of Health. Those that are assessed as being victims of drug abuse will be directed to the Paro Empowerment Center or an alternative drug treatment program, several of which are available in the country. The elderly are usually directed at an old age home for care. So it depends on the assessment of the individual who voluntarily decides to come to the socially displaced center at the car park to engage in that assessment with us, and then for assignment to an appropriate rehabilitation program. Now, the ministry has specifically, the ministry has on stream, yes, the Paparo Empowerment Center and several other programs that which we can direct the individual to if they're mentally challenged. We have the Cohort program, we have the Rebirth program, we have the New Life Ministry program. We also have the elderly homes, which we would transfer persons to, and the ministry meets the cost of that. And again, I'm saying that we have 2 facilities that are coming on stream shortly, which would also provide additional transitional housing for those persons who so desire. I really want to put on the table that the service, while it's available, persons must volunteer for inclusion in the services provided. And there may be a shortfall in facilities known as transitional housing for those people who are assessed as socially displaced, and the ministry has been working assiduously to identify those facilities. As I said, 2 should come on stream shortly. Refurbishment works are near completion, and we have 2 others that we are negotiating for that should come on stream within this fiscal. Madam Chair.
So having regard to what is in place now and what is to come, into being soon, would that cater for the 336 that have been identified as spaces that you need as of March 2021?
Madam
Or will there still be a shortfall?
We do not anticipate any major shortfall because the intention is to rehabilitate persons. Some of them may require long-term treatment. Some of them may require long-term mental health treatment, for example. So really what we need to be able to do is assess what are the needs of our clients. We are currently engaged at the socially displaced center at the Nibdek Kappa, trying to relocate about 50 persons at that facility. Some of them are elderly and they can easily be transferred to senior citizens' homes, where the government will meet the cost of their care. And those are the people between 55 years and older. So that group we are catering for out of those 50 that we have identified as being able to transfer. So the elderly homes, those will go to the elderly homes. We also have some persons who may have already indicated their willingness to accept our social services grant and meet the cost of their own accommodation among that 50. So those are other options that we will look at. Those people just simply need funding to ensure that they can pay a rent somewhere and to treat with their basic food supply. There are others at the center who are definitely in need of long-term mental health care, and these must be referred to the Ministry of Health. There are others there who are simply in need. We have elderly, mentally ill, addiction, and those
Madam
addiction.
Madam P.S. Johnson, may I ask for some clarification, please? What takes place if the person does not agree to voluntary assessment? What happens next?
Madam Chair, if our officers encounter someone on the street who refuses to go for assessment or to go to the socially displaced center, there is nothing more that we can do but alert the police or the Ministry of Health to see if they can make an intervention with the individual in order to have some action taken in terms of their removal from the streets. The Ministry of Social Development does not have the authority to remove or force anyone to go to the socially displaced center.
I have observed that the report, the submission from the Mayor Ministry is that disaggregated by gender, but I have no idea about age. And if you tell me, if you can, how many of those people will fall under the age of 25 years, if you can?
Ms. Bora can answer that.
Good morning, everyone. That data, 336 persons, is obtained via what's called a head count. The head count does not allow for a determination of age. It is simply in the streets, in the night, counting the number of persons. So what we determine is number and gender. But overall, our population is predominantly male. And also the issues in terms of predominance, the age group is really between 39 to 55. That's where the predominance usually is. And we use that from data that's at the center. We extrapolate that that's what we would see on the streets.
Yeah, because you'd imagine that to be able to make any kind of plan, you ought to know who you're dealing with going forward. Now, who are some of the stakeholders collaborating with the ministry in implementing, these initiatives that you're planning? You have set out quite an impressive plan of things that you're going to do. Temporary care, primary care, whole continuum. And could you name some of your stakeholders for us? And of course, the listening public.
The key stakeholders that we have been dealing with, Chair, would include the City Corporation, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of National Security, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, the Ministry of Planning, and the Ministry of Agriculture. There are some other minor stakeholders, like, for example, the Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited. We have been trying to negotiate with them for some of their bungalows for the purpose of housing some of these people. And of course, the Ministry of Housing and UDICOT in terms of planning and executing those projects, which would require the custom design and build of facilities to meet the needs of the group.
In your submission, you made reference to the Socially Displaced Persons Act. And I must thank you for that. I wasn't even aware that such an act existed. Perhaps because, had we been the Finance and Legal Affairs Committee might have looked at, because we've been looking at matters, in fact, legislation that have not been proclaimed. So perhaps we could have looked, perhaps it's not too late to add that to find out what is happening with that. But having heard you just now and having perused your papers that you submitted, and when you look at the act and the social displacement unit and the responsibility for the unit, it speaks about identifying the factors that lead to social displacement and implementing educational and other programs aimed at preventing an increase in the population of socially displaced persons. And nowhere do I see a mention, do I get a mention even this morning on the papers, any link with the Ministry of Education. And I'm concerned, having regard to the spectrum of persons within, the ambit of your remit, that the Ministry of Education is not being engaged. Are there any thought given to that? Any plans? Because you're talking rehabilitation, and therefore I would imagine that would be key in all of that, this process.
Yes, and Madam Chair, while it may be good to engage the Ministry of Education at this point in terms of treating with social displacement within the student population, our treatment of education for the socially displaced is really within our model for social services, services empowerment. And that's a model that we are adopting to encourage people to remove themselves from their vulnerability. Street dwelling really occurs when we have not treated with a particular vulnerability affecting the individual. Mm-hmm. And therefore, our new model of social development and social empowerment and social service delivery really treats with how we get people to step up and step out of poverty and to treat with their vulnerability. So our education piece is within that whole model of moving persons out of that poverty, over that poverty and outside of that vulnerability situation. So it's captured within there as opposed to treating with it at the level of the education system. And while I agree that we should engage the Ministry of Education at this time, because that whole vulnerability thing starts at that level. The position of someone on the streets did not happen yesterday. It's a whole system, and we really need to deal with the system holistically.
Well articulated.
Madam P.S. Johnson, I actually have two follow-ups for you. One, in discussion regarding the Socially Displaced Persons Act of 2000. I saw that you stated that the Act had certain weaknesses. What has been done since then to strengthen, and how are you going to move forward with that? And I also noticed in your submission a breakdown of the 336. How many are mentally ill, socially displaced, senior citizens, etc.? Just a little more detail, please. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you for that. In terms of strengthening the Act, we have prepared a policy document that would inform the various areas within the Act that we would want to be considered for amendment. That has not been shared with the stakeholders as yet in any public kind of way. But we have held discussions with health and some of the key agencies in terms of advancing those amendments that we see as necessary in order to make that Act really effective.
What about the Office of the Attorney General? Have they been engaged?
We have had initial discussions with the Attorney General's office as well. Yeah. However, in recent times, we have recognized that Act of 2000 was developed without the benefit of a policy. And therefore, our decision has to be made now whether we want to proceed with an overall policy to treat with the Act as opposed to the amendments that we have before us. And that's a decision that the ministry is actively engaged in. Your other question, Madam Chair, about the breakdown, I'll have Ms. Rez answer that.
Thank you, PS. As indicated earlier, the 336 represent persons who are on the streets, who would have been identified on a particular night, sleeping on the streets of Port Street. So that kind of breakdown is not available, but we would be able to provide breakdowns subsequent to assessment. So, for example, the persons who are at the Center for Socially Displaced Persons, we are able to provide breakdown in terms of what you're asking in their categories, that can be provided. But for the 336, it's only when they come into the system we're able to make a determination as to what their needs are, what their issues are. We have persons with, at CSDP currently, we have 30 persons with a mental health diagnosis.
And that population, Madam Chair, at the CSDP is 111.
Okay, I understand, but please clarify for me, is it that there is an intention to have an exercise to assess the persons who are currently not in the system? Because you said one particular night, and I know that different nights, variations, correct? Is it the intention of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services to?
Madam Chair, we could only assess those persons if they come with us to the assessment center.
All right.
And we cannot force them to do that.
Okay. I do recall there was some attempts by the ministry in the past to do street assessments. Could you clarify that for me?
Sure.
Because I would have been written by your ministry asking to provide information on the street dwellers in the borough of Arima. Is that still an ongoing process?
Yes.
Yes, water, that's an engagement of persons on the streets to do a preliminary assessment as to what the person's issue might be. Again, with a view to getting them to go to the assessment center so that we can actually do formal interventions, formal investigations as to what their issues are. So yes, that engagement on the streets still happens. We have field officers attached to the unit, and that happens in Port of Spain on a weekly basis. Prior to COVID, it was 3 days for the week in Port of Spain, with other cities being done on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So currently, we still maintain 2 days a week on the streets of Port of Spain through the field officers.
Okay, thank you. Members of the committee, would anyone like to continue?
Madam Chair, Esmond Ford here. Just a follow-up question for PS Johnson. In terms of a template, or let's say, are we mirroring any particular country, any particular cities with regards to this street dwelling problem that we are experiencing in Trinidad and Tobago? You know, I know each city or country may have a unique situation with regards to this aspect, but do we have a template that we are working with? Like, for instance, you know, have we studied any other environment with regards to our situation in Trinidad and Tobago? Madam, yes.
Madam Chair, we look at the situations of, we are looking at the situations of several countries. We have been adopting standards, for example, of some of those cities in terms of how they deal with homelessness. And those are being used to, at present in the draft standards that we have created. That's a policy that we a document that we are actively looking at in terms of having it finalized. We are also looking at some of the approaches to assessment in some major cities, and some of that we have adopted in terms of our planning and execution of the project to treat with our street dwellers. So yes, we are actively doing that kind of research to inform some of the decisions that we are making here, mindful of the uniqueness of our society.
Secondly, Madam PS, in terms of roles and responsibilities, in terms of your knowledge, do you think that the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services should be the ministry to handle this particular aspect of the street dwelling? Now, from the statistics, right? Again, we are only dealing with Port of Spain, and which I presume has the majority of the street dwellers, right? In the constituency where I have some responsibility, which is Tunapuna, we do have similar scenarios. But do you think that the Ministry of Social Development, seeing that they have to depend so much on the Ministry of Health for the tools, for the apparatus, for the equipment, and for most of the parameters that are needed for this particular street dwelling aspect, do you think that the Ministry of Social Development should be saddled with this responsibility? I would just like to, get your opinion on that aspect.
Madam Chair, the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services has a role to play in treating with all vulnerable groups. Street dwellers are indeed a vulnerable group that we must pay attention to. And as you said, it's all over the country. It may just mean that Tunapuna or the Shoguanas may have fewer persons than Port of Spain. What I think is important for us to do is to have a collaborative and joint approach to dealing with the problem. in our research of other jurisdictions, we have found that the legislation is key to supporting a collaborative approach to treating with street dwellers. And that's one of the gaps that we are seeing in our system. So for example, when we looked at street dwelling in countries like India, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, and those countries which stand out here like Denmark and the United Kingdom would have strong legislation which supports the collaboration between the ministries of health, the police service, and the Ministry of Housing and Social Development in a way that facilitates the removal of the street dweller from the streets and their rehabilitation based on a continuum of care that we have identified. And I think that within that, we have some gaps that we need to treat with, and maybe we need to treat with those urgently. The Ministry of Social Development ought to be in a position, like the Ministry of Health, to provide services for those who are mentally challenged. That would remain the responsibility of the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Social Development has a responsibility to provide the care and protection and the transitional facilities to rehabilitate those persons who are simply displaced and have nowhere to live.
Thank you very much.
So there is a responsibility there for the Ministry of Social Development.
Thank you very much. I recognize Member Padarat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. PS, I wanted to raise a particular matter based on something that was said earlier about the Paparo Empowerment Center. As you may be aware, it falls in the constituency of Princestown, and we have had some challenges in the recent past where persons who have been placed at the Paparo Empowerment Center, few as they may be, spend a lot more time in the community of Paparo outside of the center than being rehabilitated at the center. The question that I really had was whether or not this is as a result of limited resources available at the center in terms of personnel and so on, or what would be the challenges the Paparo Empowerment Center faces that would allow a situation like that to continue.
Madam Chair, the Paparo program is a drug rehabilitation program. It's a voluntary program. Now, persons will be assigned to the facility for rehabilitation, but we cannot hold them at the facility. And hence the reason why we have such a high dropout rate of our clients at that facility. So we are now down to approximately 5 clients. Two of them will complete their treatment in the next 2 weeks or so. And we're then down to 3. The issue here for us is that because it's voluntary, we cannot hold you against your will and violate your rights to leave. And therefore, our intake there has been pretty low. It has never been up to the capacity of 50. But the fact remains that the program is sound enough to allow some people, albeit very few, to complete the program. And I would say that we have some limitations in terms of resources, but it's ought not to be at the point where our clients are allowed to leave the facility in the way that you have described. We are up to speed in security. We have counselors. We have been providing all the needs of the client in terms of their meals and their hygienic items. And so the issue of clients leaving and spending time in the village. I don't know if that might be part of their therapy, but the center is indeed a therapeutic, has a therapeutic environment that should allow our clients to remain. And I'm again putting on the table that it's a voluntary treatment facility, and we cannot hold anyone against their will on site.
Madam Chair, if I may, the Port of Spain City Corporation, in their submission to us, indicated that they have received allegations that person in charge of the Center for Socially Displaced Persons, that they have in fact been collecting money from the homeless persons and families to accommodate them. So is the ministry aware of these allegations? And has there been any investigation? And what is the procedure for investigating these allegations and the repercussions for persons who have been collecting money from homeless persons to accommodate them at the center?
Madam Chair, the ministry has an agreement with the St. Vincent de Paul Society to manage that center for us at the cost of $2.8 million per annum. The center has a capacity for housing 200 people, and as we indicated earlier, it currently houses 111 people. Recently, let me put on the table that this is the first time that I am hearing of this particular situation, but I am aware that we have been having complaints from members of the who have been assigned to the facility. We have put in a complaints mechanism recently, and we're hoping that that will be able to remedy many of the issues that we see being raised by our clients. And if I could ask Ms. Juteram to indicate a little bit more about that complaints mechanism in summary.
Good morning, Madam Chair. The St. Vincent de Paul is the NGO which is assigned with the responsibility to operationalize the CSDP. Within that, the St. Vincent de Paul, there's a home committee which basically manages the grievance, any grievance or complaints that members of the home may have. So therefore, there is a form that persons have to fill out, basically to say what their problem is. It will be placed before the committee through the manager of the CSDP. So therefore, the person has a right and an opportunity to be heard, and their complaints adequately and sufficiently addressed and resolved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see Member Ford, Member Potterath, and then we'll go back to Member Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we have other persons there, but I think the discussion we are having now with the PS is very critical, you know, in the objectives of what we are trying to achieve. Persuasion, all right? And with regards to the Attorney General and Legal Affairs role, right? I know some headway have been taking place, but where are we at presently with regards to, again, proposals towards the Attorney General Department with regards to legislation in order to ensure that we in Trinidad and Tobago might be able to use more than persuasion with regards to this street dwelling problem that we have in Trinidad and Tobago. Could you shed some light there, Madam PS, as to, you know, in terms of recommendations, communication with the AG department as to where we are at present with regards to any aspect of this?
Madam Chair, the policy review document to amend the Socially Displaced Act. What we have done so far is completed the internal review of the document. We still need to have our ministry's executive agree with that, go to stakeholder consultation, finalize that policy, submit it to the cabinet, and then of course to the Office of the Attorney General to have whatever is being proposed as amendment to be treated with.
Any timeline has been, oh, so sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. We anticipate that we should be able to get to cabinet by September 2022.
Actually, that's the question I was going to ask with regards to that timeline. So you hit it on the button right there. Thanks, Madam PS.
Member Padarat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. PS, just to follow up on a point that you made earlier, and it was a bit startling when you indicated that there was a high turnover level in terms of persons leaving some of these centers. And while we do appreciate, and I don't want to come across as though we don't appreciate the work that your unit with responsibility has for this is doing, can you indicate whether or not there are any internal inquiries within the ministry, within the units, that would help to determine, separate and apart from persons wanting to leave the program, what are some of the other contributing factors that would create an environment that persons would not be comfortable enough to stay? Are there any internal inquiries that is happening within the ministry to determine these things at the various centers?
Certainly.
Madam Chair, the nature of the street dwelling population and their issues, engagement and having the opportunity, especially via rehabilitation programs, which usually speaks to some kind of addiction. The nature of addiction creates the challenge of being able to hold this person's attention and hold them based on what addiction does. It really distracts you, and you want to be back doing what you are doing. In terms of continually looking at what we do and how we do it, at least as far as rehabilitation that the ministry would be responsible for, which is at PSPEC. Yes, there is the looking at what we're doing, how we're doing it, getting feedback from clients in terms of complaints, issues that they have, to see where it is possible to make changes and address. So it is the nature of the social work engagement to determine how what you are providing to the client is being received, and to seek to improve on it where it is possible, where the issues might be as far as service provision is concerned. So as far as what the ministry is responsible for, there is that review in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Madam Pierce, the MP for Princeton gave a very good point, but I want to go back to the St. Vincent de Paul Society because I am a little confused. How come there are persons at CSDP receiving grants? Because if the ministry is paying for St. Vincent de Paul to take care of the persons, there's a contradiction. Then why are they still in receipt of the grants? And is something going to be done to stop these practices? And who is going to be held accountable for that? Because from what I understand, once the government is taking care of them financially, they're not supposed to be also receiving grants. So there seems to be something very untidy about that situation. Can I get some clarification?
Madam Chair, let me clarify. We have situations where there are approximately 47 persons who have been placed at CSDP and are in receipt of government grants. Now, when they applied, some of them, when they applied for the grant, they were not at CSDP. They continued to get the grant while at CSDP. What we have done, we are engaged in an exercise to assess our grant payments currently. Some of it would have been in the public domain in terms of that exercise that we recently conducted. And the exercise has shown up that there are persons who are in receipt of our grants and who are at not only CSDP, but they may be at another institution. We are attempting currently to treat with that issue as concisely and as quickly as possible to prevent its occurrence. Our current policy says that if the government is paying for you at an institution, you ought not to be in receipt of a grant. And therefore, we have given some ultimatum to those people at CSW who are in receipt of grants. We have been holding their checks and we are telling them that if it is that you can find alternative accommodation, we will continue with the grant. And that accommodation cannot be on the streets. But if you continue at CSDP, we will continue to fund you under the current subvention arrangement. So that is the kind of discussions we are having with those people there who are in receipt of a grant. Those that are over the age of 55 who we can accommodate at our community care facilities, we have also engaged them with the option to go to one of those facilities and we will pay through our community care program. And we will now discontinue the grant. So we are working assiduously at trying to eliminate that scenario at all care facilities.
Madam Pierce, I do have a question that was not answered. Who is being held accountable for this? Because this is not something that's happening now. This has been happening for quite some time. So I want to know who is the accountable officer or department or arm of the ministry? Who exactly should be held responsible for something like this? Because to me, this is
Madam Chair, as permanent secretary here, I will take responsibility for the occurrence of that kind of event. But it really speaks to the need for us to work in a coordinated fashion so that we know who our clients are. One of the things that we intend to do via our digitization program is to ensure that we understand our client in a coordinated manner. So the social welfare division, yes, understands that they are paying a grant, but they also need to understand that that individual being paid a grant exists within a family. And therefore the family services division ought to be engaged in terms of supporting and helping that client to step up, be above the poverty, the vulnerability line. It also means that the social displacement unit ought to understand the needs of that client as it relates to their family and the grant payment.
May I ask, is the social welfare director, is there a representative from the social welfare director?
The social director, social welfare is not here with us.
Okay, is it possible that, Madam Pierce, that it could be submitted to this committee for us, what exactly is happening and what do you propose to stop this from happening in the near future? Would that be possible?
Madam Chair.
In the interest of time.
Madam Chair, our current process involves one of identifying those persons who are in our care system that we are paying for and in receipt of a grant. We have done so already for social, the social displacement center. What we are engaging those 47 clients in is a procedure to eliminate the grant or have them relocated to one of our facilities where they can be properly cared for. So we have laid out the options for those persons as it relates to the payment of the grant, with the view to ending that kind of a norm.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair.
Ahi, hand is up, and then we will move on to Member Ford. But
no, Madam Chair, depending on what the point is, I just want to add with the request that you made, if we can get the dollar value, please.
Thank you, because members, I'm very much concerned because I still do not think that any entity is being held accountable for, and I will say plainly, the abuse of taxpayers' money. And while the PS has quite nobly taken it upon herself for the responsibility, I happen to know that, Madam PS, you are fairly new to this position, correct? So we need to see some level of accountability. And thank you very much, Member Ford and Member Thompson-Ahi.
I have a short question. If you're not in receipt of a grant and you are in an institution like the Center for Socially Displaced Persons, do you get a stipend at all, or how does it, is it that the St. Vincent de Paul going to satisfy all your needs? I mean, do these people even get pocket change if they are not in receipt of a grant?
Madam Chair, our arrangement with the St. Vincent de Paul allows them to provide 3 meals, support the medical care of the client through our public health clinics, and to provide the social services, the counseling services are provided by the Ministry of Social Development through our social workers at the facility. We do not pay a stipend to the client.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other member who would like to ask further questions before we move on to the Ministry of Health? Well, if not, Madam PS, thank you very much to you and your team. And of course, you know, we may have follow-up questions.
Chairman, hello,
yes.
Chairman, sorry.
Yes,
what happened, John?
Yes,
thank you so much for the opportunity. I just want to commend the Honorable PS, Jackie Johnson, for that sterling contribution. I also just wanted to find out, she had said the utilization of the facility in Piparo is way under par, and I think only 5 clients, she said, quite right now, etc., and it is well in terms of being serviced and ready. Is there anything one can do? I know the protocol now is for one to go there voluntarily. Is there anything that one can do, given that already there is a cost attached to that facility?
Madam Chair, the Piparo facility comprises 115 hectares of land. So it's a huge facility. And the government at present is considering how best to optimize the use of that facility. Yes, and we may have to engage in sharing the facility to meet some of the other needs that we may have nationally. But the issue at hand here is how best we can keep our clients at the facility without some kind of order, maybe from the court, for them to remain at the compound. With an entirely voluntary system in place, there is no way that we can deny someone a request to move out of the facility, despite all the meeting their needs and attempting to ensure that might be the best option for them at this point in time.
Thanks a lot, Madam Chair. I just want again to commend the PS and that really sterling contribution she has given this morning. I think for myself, we have a better view of what is happening in that particular sector. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Member John. Once again, Madam PS, thank you very much for your contribution. We appreciate all the valuable information. And now we move on to the Ministry of Health. And I know that Member Padarat will be starting us off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the members visiting from the Ministry of Health, thank you for taking the time to join us and share this information with us. Madam Chair, through you, a lot of the questions and concerns that I have really surround two main issues. And this will be in relation to some of the things that was also mentioned by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. And to the representative from the Ministry of Health, the first question that we'd like to start off with in terms of information provided to us would be, what would be the ministry's capacity at this time with respect to the support that it provides in terms of getting persons voluntarily off the street to be assessed? Is there a specific unit at the ministry, and what is the capacity of the ministry at this time in terms of servicing all of Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to persons that are requiring assessment and getting them off the streets?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. There is not a specific unit at the ministry for that purpose. However, all mental health officers are sworn in as justices of the peace. Mental health officers are nurses who have been given specific training in community mental health. And in addition, they are trained to work with persons in the community and provide mental health care within the community. They are sworn in as justices of the peace, which allows them under the Mental Health Act to approach persons who are believed or considered to be suffering from a mental health disorder. If that person is in a public place, engage that person, do an assessment, and if on the basis of that assessment, the person needs to be provided with mental health care, they are given the authority under the law to accompany that person to a psychiatric ward or a psychiatric hospital where that care can be provided. A mental audit of the mental health services human resource was completed just a few months ago and tells us exactly where we are at in terms of numbers of the different mental health professionals. In addition to which, subsequent to that audit, we did a needs analysis. We collaborated with all of the regional health authorities, mental health teams, to look at not just how they currently provide their services, but how they plan to improve those services as we implement the cabinet approved National Mental Health Policy 2019 to 2029 that was approved at the end of 2019. So that now that we're in the implementation phase of that policy, we have done a HR needs analysis, which was only completed about 2 weeks ago and has to be submitted to the executive of the Ministry of Health for approval. And once that approval is completed, then our implementation plan can be sent forward to cabinet for approval, and then we will be able to move forward in a more effective manner with the implementation of our decentralization plan. I took the time to explain that because it is the decentralization plan that is focused on more community-based mental health services. Therefore, those very mental health officers will be located in the community to a large extent. In fact, the vast majority of them will be working primarily in the community. Currently, we have a system where people have to be in the hospital on certain days and in the community on certain days. And there may be a need, you may be being called to assist somewhere where somebody needs one of these assessments, but you may be unable to respond to that need because you are fulfilling a hospital-based responsibility. So we want to separate those two things as part of our implementation of our decentralized model of care, so that these mental health officers will be available in the communities and better able to respond to these needs.
Madam Chair, again through you to the member from the Ministry of Health. Member, can you indicate to us what is the current complement of officers at this time?
Yes, I have that for you. Currently, we have 49 mental health officers distributed across the regional health authorities.
Okay, and can you indicate how do you go about the distribution of these 49 officers? What is the mechanism that is used in terms of the assignment of these officers?
The regional health authorities are the delivery arm of the Ministry of Health with respect to health service delivery. So therefore, the mental health officers are employed within the various RHA systems, so that at this time we have 30 assigned to the Northwest RHA, 11 assigned to the Southwest RHA, and 8 assigned to the Tobago RHA. There are currently none assigned to the North Central or Eastern RHA because the Northwest RHA provides the majority of mental health services within those two regions at this time.
And member, can you indicate whether or not there is any plans afoot with respect to an additional intake of officers? Because as the numbers you provided suggest to me, it seems to be a little bit inadequate. Is there any plans to bring in additional persons as these mental health officers?
That's one of the needs that was identified when we did the needs analysis, and that we were aware of intuitively even before we did that formal needs analysis, so that the HR component of the decentralization implementation plan would provide the scope for additional mental health officers to be brought on board.
Okay. One of the things that you indicated earlier that had me a little concerned, to be honest, was the way in which these officers are brought on board. And I know you did indicate earlier that some of them would have been nurses, former justices of the peace, etc. But in terms of their relationship and relating to persons who are street dwellers that we're dealing with in particular today, is it not more prudent to have some of these mental health officers with a more clinical background in terms of psychology and psychiatric medicine and so on?
The process for the persons who are sworn, who can be under the current law sworn in as justices of the peace, are mental health officers and social workers. I didn't mention it, but there are medical officers who are sworn in as well. They're generally senior persons within the psychiatric fraternity. So they are also sworn in as justices of the peace, and they do have responsibility in that regard. But within the current system, they don't go out to engage these persons because, again, with the current system whereby they are heavily invested in hospital-based services, it is not practical for them to be able to do that. But once the decentralized model of care is fully implemented, then there would be, once this model is accepted and fully implemented, there would be psychiatrists and other doctors assigned to the communities who can provide basically any level of care that is required in the communities.
Madam Chair, if you would allow me one additional question. Member, I am aware of the limitations within our jurisdiction as it relates to the Mental Health Act. But I am also aware of other jurisdictions that we share our jurisprudence with that allows in instances where persons who are street dwellers and have psychiatric problems are unable to make decisions for themselves, and there is no next of kin that can be contacted and so on, that the state is given a certain amount of leeway. Are there any discussions among stakeholders, whether it be the Attorney General's office, the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, to explore these avenues in terms of giving the Ministry of Health a bit more teeth to bring assistance to persons who are street dwellers that require the psychiatric intervention?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. Could you please repeat it? Sorry.
What I'm saying is that I understand in Trinidad and Tobago the limitations with respect to mental health legislation. The PS at the Ministry of Health of Social Development was at pains to indicate that, listen, you know, as much as we want to help and we want to get involved, there's a limitation of not forcing persons. What I'm saying is that while that exists in Trinidad and Tobago, there are other jurisdictions that we share our jurisprudence with that allows for the state to have a bit more teeth and leeway of getting that sort of psychiatric assistance to persons that require it through legislation. And I was wondering whether or not the Ministry of Health is exploring these avenues to get that teeth, that additional teeth, to provide this assistance to persons on the street, and whether or not these discussions have begun in any quarters at all, whether it be among stakeholders, AG's office, social development, etc.
With respect to legislation, the Ministry of Health is aware of the fact that there is a need to have another look at our Mental Health Act, and we are in the process of discussing that and working towards updating it with specific reference to getting care for persons with mental health disorders. Even though the Mental Health Act is not perfect, it does allow, in the instance where someone in a public place is suspected of being of having a mental health need, it does allow the mental health officer to do an assessment of that person, and based on that assessment, make a decision as to whether that person should be should be taken when necessarily involuntarily to a mental health care facility. So it does have the capacity for involuntary action. In those instances, the mental health officers engage the assistance of the police, and they can and do on a fairly regular basis involuntarily take that person to the nearest psychiatric ward in a general hospital or psychiatric hospital, depending on the location from which the person was identified. So the law does give us some teeth, but that has to be in an instance where the person is in need of mental health care in a hospital setting. When the person is not in need of inpatient care, then we have to respect their right to liberty and we have to offer them outpatient care. And again, that is done. If it's in Port of Spain, they are referred to the Mental Health and Wellness Center on Pembroke Street, Port of Spain.
And Madam Chair, I know.
Go ahead.
Sorry?
Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I know I'd indicated that was my last question, but I just have one additional.
No problem. Go ahead.
The question, yes, thank you. The additional question that I wanted to find out is that in light of the current environment as it relates to the COVID pandemic, somewhere at the end of 2019, continuing into 2020 and 2021, what optics are you seeing with respect to the data of persons who find themselves as street dwellers, but also suffering from serious psychological and mental issues?
I will refer to Ms. Lewis for that question, please.
Hi, yes, we have seen an increase in street dwellers presenting, in particularly to the hospital, particularly during the lockdown stages, not necessarily for admission, because we know them so well. Some of them, they will come in for a change of clothes, for a shower, for a meal. We have had, for 2019, 38 persons with no fixed abode admitted to the hospital. This is not necessarily from the Port of Spain area, but yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lewis. Member Carter, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, based on what Ms. Lewis had indicated, what I wanted to find out was that whether or not this information is broken down per regional health authority, and whether or not that data is also available for 2020 and 2021.
The data is available for 2020. We had 38 persons with no fixed abode admitted as well. And for 2018, that number was 58. We do not have the breakdown per regional health authority, but that is something we could get.
Okay.
Please, could you please, Ms. Lewis, submit it to the committee? Thank you very much. I see Member Ford's hand is up, but before I have a question from the public to Dr. Otello. Do the mental health officers conduct field assessment of the street dwellers? And if so, how often are these done?
Okay, what happens with respect to field assessments is that once we get a report from the public, it can be from the public, it can be, we sometimes get reports from the Ministry of Social Development, we get reports from several different agencies. So once we get a report that a person in a particular location appears to be mentally ill, a mental health officer is dispatched to that location to do that assessment once they locate the person, so that it varies depending on the frequency of those reports.
Dr. Otello, I happen to have had in the past personal interactions with your mental health officers in the borough of Arima. And I can tell you, one particular case took as much as 11 months. And the gentleman was clearly mentally ill, naked, living in the Arima Savannah. So I'm very much interested in what is the wait time? What is the timeline? And as I wait for your answer, Member Ford will follow up with his own.
Okay, with respect to the wait time, again, that 11-month wait should not happen. I don't know the specifics of that case, so I can't explain what the reason would have been. But under normal circumstances, the mental health officer is dispatched within, as soon as the report is received, generally, once it's received between 8 and 4 Monday to Friday. If it's received after hours, then clearly the next day they would be told about the situation and they generally respond. So that I don't know what happened in that specific situation. I know that on some occasions where persons have had difficulty for some reason, they have sent emails to the mental health unit in the ministry, and we have contacted the various RHs depending on where the person is located. And our experience has been that of a prompt response in the vast majority of situations.
Dr. Otello, I would like to say that has not been my experience, and I know I'm fully aware that there are still very much outstanding matters in the borough of Arima, and I will allow Mr. Ford to ask his question now. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Otello, good morning again. It was said that there is not a department, a specific department that deals with these particular aspects of the street dwelling, whether mental cases or whatever. All right. But are there any recommendations in place in order to ensure that we have a department to deal with this particular aspect? Because we know of the numbers of 336, whether correct or incorrect, but we have been given a figure of 336 persons. Right now, that's for the spade. Right. My colleague was just talking about Arima when she wore the hat as being the mayor of Arima. I can talk for Tunapuna, and I'm sure my colleague MP Padarat have been talking about his Piparo area. So the numbers of 336 is just relates to Port of Spain. So I'm saying that in light of this, I think there should be some proposals, some sort of projection going forward as to a particular department and resources to actually generate, this sort of to ensure the importance of this particular department. So could you shed some light in terms of going forward, what proposals are in stream with regards to resources, department, a greater emphasis on the street dwelling as it relates to having it, now being structured in order to ensure that, the numbers are minimized? Doctor?
Okay, that number of over 300 was the total number of street dwellers. That would not reflect the total number of persons on the streets who have a mental health disorder. Based on international literature, the percentage of 30% is usually reflects the percentage of mental health persons on the streets who have a mental health disorder. Having considered that, not everyone who has a mental health disorder needs to be admitted to a hospital to receive care. And that is why we have to be very, very careful that we treat with these persons in an inclusive manner that respects their autonomy and their dignity. We encourage that collaboration that facilitates the process of ensuring that those persons get the care that they need. But we do that in a way that does not make the person, the average street dweller, afraid of a mental health officer or unwilling to engage with a mental health officer. Therefore, we want them to see us as their partners in care. We don't want them to see us as persons who are coming to pick them up, to take them to St. Anne's Hospital, whether or not that's what they need. So that as I described the decentralized model of care, that model places more human resource potential in the communities as opposed to the current model in which most mental health professionals are vested in hospital settings and have to do that dual back and forth between the hospital and the community. If the mental health officer for your community is resident in the community, working in the community on an ongoing basis, and if some of the proposals that we have, for instance, we're looking at options such as 24-hour on call, which of course will require, dialogue with unions and things like that before they could be operationalized. But it would, if successful, allow for a response after hours. So we're looking at ways to make our outreach more assertive and more effective, but also have those mental health officers available across the community whenever they need it for whatever purpose. And specific to this inquiry, have them more accessible when they're needed for the purpose of engaging with street dwellers.
All right, Dr. Otello, all right. Hold on, Chairman. Hold on one sec, Chairman. All right, thanks for the information again. So could you then provide this committee with a breakdown, schedule of the various areas in Trinidad and Tobago, of the various health officers that are responsible. Like, for example, Tunapuna, who is the health officer for Tunapuna? Email contact, office contact, so that we can have a relationship. Because again, I can readily speak to one, the Etihad grounds, right, where we have a migration of individuals homeless. We don't know whether there's any mental cases. We can talk of Constantine Park, Mokoya, Tunapuna. We can talk of Osdenville Park, Ozenville Road in Tunapuna. And within the Tunapuna constituency, those are the three main areas where we would have street dwellers, right? Whether they come there to sleep during the night or whether they spend the whole day at those particular institutions. Now, I know we are focusing mainly on the Port of Spain and environs, but again, those are some pointers, that some pins we need to stick at those three locations. So again, provide the committee with a breakdown of the various health officers. I think it would be good for all members of constituencies so that we can have an actual appreciation of who these individuals are, and then we can have our communication in terms of going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I will turn you over to Ms. Keisha Williams in a short while in terms of the names of the officers who are assigned to the specific locations. However, I would also add that at this point in time, in terms of email contacts, we're not quite there yet in terms of the digitalization of services, so that our mental health officers do not at this time have a government, they do not all have government email addresses that could be used for this purpose. Some of them have personal emails, some of them don't, so that that would not be a reliable way of reaching them. So that the most reliable way at this precise point in time would be the ways that Ms. Lewis will describe to you. So I hand over to Ms. Lewis.
But Doctor, again, Ms. Lewis don't need to give us, I'm thinking it can be provided in writing, rather than to give a breakdown.
Sure, we can
of all.
Okay, we can have that submitted, yes, certainly.
Right. So again, it would be person's name, office address, and probably a telephone contact.
We can certainly provide that.
Right. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Member Ford. Doctor, I'd just like to say for the record that there's a gentleman on Abercrombie Street, the corner of Nallis, that I see very often on my way to the ministry or to Parliament. He's usually stark naked and bathing at the leak at the corner there, and I would really like Ms. Lewis to perhaps send the mental health officer with the responsibility for Port of Spain in that particular area. You can find him there early in the morning, between the hours of 7 to 9, and even earlier, I am told. Dr. Otello, I would like to move on to the training of the municipal police officers. Could you give us some more information on that, the sensitization process?
Yes, I can. That process takes place from time to time, and even as we speak, another round of training is being arranged, and I saw an email to that effect as recently as this morning. The training provides them with general mental health awareness. It provides them with information on prevention and management of violence, so that they learn how to de-escalate situations in which a mentally ill person may be agitated or anxious. And in other words, they learn how to more safely engage that person. And they also learn, they will also be exposed to some psychological first aid, which is the mental health equivalent of first aid intervention for physical injuries. It's by mental health intervention for emotional and emergency mental health situations. So that, and it also, in the training, we also familiarize them with the Mental Health Act, how it works, what their role under the Act is, what the role of the mental health officer is, how that engagement takes place, so that as a result of that training, they are better equipped to work with us in ensuring that persons are safely transported from the location where they are found to the nearest health facility where they can receive the care that they need.
Are you hearing me? Dr. Otello?
Yes.
I think that my connection has dropped for a bit. But can you follow up by telling me how often are these sessions? When was the last session you had with the municipal police officers? And also let us know, what is the level of participation like?
Okay, I will have to get those details for you and I can submit it within the next few days.
Thank you very much, Member Thompson-Ahi. Do you have any follow-up questions?
Well, I must say, first of all, I'm pleasantly surprised that this program, you know, with the training of police officers is just a tool, because I'm sure the national community has been very concerned about the number of untoward incidents involving the police and the mentally ill people. Now, you wrote up a day of care during which street dwellers were provided with information on how and where to access public mental health services, the benefits of engaging with psychiatric social workers, referrals to psychiatric social workers, and basic health and wellness screening. Now, is this a continuous exercise by the ministry? And if not, does the ministry intend to consider conducting the exercise more often? Through your chair to Dr. Othello.
Through the chair, that initiative was an initiative of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, and the Ministry of Health was invited to participate, and we were more than happy to collaborate with them in that regard. And we're quite happy to do so if subsequent events of that nature are arranged.
So if I have to go back to the pilot program, to the mental health training, when did it start?
Pardon me?
The police officers, when did that start, the training?
Okay, to give context, mental health training to some extent has always, well, I wouldn't say always, but has for a long time been a part of police training. While I worked at the St. Anne's Hospital, we would have police officers, prison officers, and so forth pass through St. Anne's Hospital as part of their training and be exposed to some mental health training. In more recent years, a more specific, more targeted approach was requested, and a curriculum was developed, and a pilot program rolling out that curriculum took place. What we're now in the process of doing is getting that curriculum accredited, so that it can be a part of, so that it can be a standard part of the police training curriculum to be delivered to each cadre of police officers that will be trained going forward. So that is the plan with respect to that training.
When did it start actually?
I think it was 2018, but I would have to double check that for you.
Oh. And involve municipal police as well. Everybody, all the police.
I would have to also double check that.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, Maite.
Recognize Member Ford.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Dr. Othello, right. In your submission on page 7, number 2A, your submission indicated that for the period 2018 to 2020, 134 persons were submitted at St. Anne's Hospital with no fixed place of abode. Right, I basically have about 5 questions. So I'll start with one. Of the 38 persons admitted in 2020, how many were readmissions to the facility?
I do not have that information at my fingertips. I don't know if Ms. Lois has it.
No, but we can certainly check that.
Right, that well, okay, you will have to supply it. Secondly, well, I presume probably you would have none of the information. So secondly, what percentage of street dwellers are ex-patients of the St. Anne's Hospital? Thirdly, how has the facility been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, right? Since COVID-19, and with regards to street dwellers going whether in or out of the facility, how has the facility been affected? Fourthly, what is the current staff complement of the facility? And fifth, is the number sufficient to treat with the new issues which may arise at the facility due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the various protocols. All will have to be submitted in writing to us. Ms. Lewis or Dr. Otello?
Is the facility St. Anne's facility you referring to?
Yes, St. Anne's facility we're referring to. Because remember, in your submission on page 7, you would have said that 134 persons were admitted. So I just wanted to get clarity on those particular 5 aspects.
What was number 3?
Number 3 is, how has the facility been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic? You know, with regards to all the health protocols, the restrictions and so on. Are you always able to persons to go in, you know, what is happening and so on?
So, well, we can start there, I can answer that. So St. Anne's Hospital has greatly been affected. We have recently been added as one of the parallel health system facilities. We have opened 2 units, 2 wards at St. Anne's Hospital to cater for COVID positive mentally ill patients requiring acute admission, 7 to 10 bedded male, 10 bedded female. So that caters for admission throughout the country of acutely unwell mentally ill patients. We have recently started PCR testing all admissions to the hospital. Of course, we have developed our own swabbing team at St. Anne's Hospital, so that reduce the reliance on primary care having to come into the hospital to do the swabbing. So we trained our own, we have a COVID team that is led by a consultant, a registrar, a house officer, nurses, and a COVID service coordinator specifically for St. Anne's Hospital. We only admit to 3 areas in the hospital as opposed to all the 5 admission wards. So we only admit to 1 admission ward, which is Ward 1 LFE. We admit to Ward 8, which is an acute, secured, aggressive male ward, and of course the forensic unit. So as of about 5 months ago, all patients are swabbed. All new admissions are swabbed on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We have been added, the hospital has been added as a client of TPHL, Trinidad Public Health Laboratory, so that 5 persons were trained at the hospital to access results. So we can do so within a 12 to 24-hour period, which is critical for us because we need to move people out of admission holding areas into other admission areas. Yeah.
Okay, so based on
so what's number 4?
Number 4, what is the current staff complement at the facility? You know, you spoke about the 10 beds males, 10 beds female, the PCR testing, the swabbing and so on. So therefore you would have had to, an increase in some staffing and so on? Or
staffing is a huge challenge, continues to be. Currently at St. Anne's Hospital, we have 418 psychiatric nurses. Now, when this was submitted, I know for a fact that this number has increased because persons have been temporarily employed since that. We currently have 10 psychologists, 2 occupational therapists. We have 31 mental health officers, 28 psychiatric social workers, and we have 50 medical officers.
Okay. And that's where E will now come in. And your numbers, as you said, sufficient, insufficient, you can work with what you have. You're cutting
completely
corners,
insufficient.
But you're not cutting corners.
And insufficient because we are continuously managing quarantine, staff being on quarantine, staff migrating. So we also have to contribute staff towards the running of the COVID unit at St. James and of course the reopening of the field hospital. So we constantly manage on a shortage. It's a constant moving around kind of arrangement to make sure wards are covered on a daily basis. What we do for the COVID wards is we ring fence those staff. So we have attendants, we have domestic, we have the nurses who work there, they only work there. So they are not allowed to work in any other area to reduce risk of cross-infection.
And again, we still try to ensure 100% health allocations and no neglect, and do it at our best ability.
Yes, we try to.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Lewis and Dr. Othello. But so the other information you'll provide it for us in writing.
Yes, questions 1 and 2.
We'll be able to provide the information. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Ford, and thank you, Ms. Lewis. And Ms. Thompson-Nahi, do you have anything further to add before we move on to the Port of Spain City Corporation?
No. We can move on to the Port of Spain Corporation.
No problem. Thank you very much. Dr. Othello, we look forward to the information regarding the municipal training to be submitted in writing.
Certainly.
Before we close off though, I noticed that New Horizons as a award in accordance to the Mental Health Act. Can we get some information on that? And the refurbishment works of a rehabilitation center, which actually falls in Davide O'Meara. And Dr. Othello, I can tell you once more from personal experience, never have I seen a space so underutilized as much as the Arima Rehabilitation Center. And if you're able to provide, can you tell me the number of patients currently assigned to that particular center? Thank you.
I would have to refer to Ms. Lewis for that information.
So the current number of patients, the current bed state is 32. We have 29 patients currently at Arima. And within the last year, we have opened a new ward on the ground floor, which has 10 beds. And these house medically, socially displaced persons. So those persons, for example, who are in continuous need of medical care, who were living in Central Block at Port of Spain General Hospital, have been relocated there. So there are 10 of those persons and 29 beds. So we have 3 vacant beds at the moment.
I know that you said refurbishment works. Is this to increase the current bed space or simply to do repairs? I know it's a very old building, correct?
To do repairs. Recently conducted repairs within the last year. The most urgent thing is we are in the process of completely redoing the sewer system and the roof works because it was leaking terribly. But the Arima rehab is in need of an overhaul and upgrading.
Yes, I know, and I'm also aware there's a lot of land space that could be better utilized in order to help us with this urgent problem. I have a question here from a member of the public regarding the number of homeless people that tested positive for COVID. Can we get any update on that, or is that information that will have to be sent, Dr. Othello?
I do not have that information because that would not come directly to me. That information would have to be sourced from the appropriate agencies.
If it's possible, if you can, yes, Ms. Lewis.
Dr. Othello, just to add, since we began swabbing all admissions, we've had 2 positive NFA, no fixed abode homeless persons, turn up positive, 1 male and 1 female.
Okay, all right. And the supply, Ms. Dr. Othello or Ms. Lewis, of medical services to street dwellers via mobile units in major cities and towns, is this going to be expanded, extended, and other places of care?
Currently, once a person is in need of any kind of medical service, and we are aware of it, we assist the person in getting to where that service is located. So if it's not a mental health service and it's an outpatient service at a health center, then that's where the person would be taken. Or if it's hospital-based care for some medical condition, then if they're in Port of Spain, they would be taken to the Port of Spain General Hospital. If they're in San Fernando, it would be the San Fernando General Hospital, and so on.
Okay, to close off, the Mental Health Act. Your legal officer is present, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Connell. Ms. Connell, amending, is there a view to amending with the involuntary relocation of street dwellers, which will of course help the Ministry of Social Development and allow municipal police as well as the TTPS to best move forward?
Hi, good morning. This is the first time that I'm hearing of that suggestion. So it would have to go as part of the policy that's being reviewed. And once approved, I suppose that they will move forward with that type of amendment.
So I take it, Dr. Otalo, the ministry has not determined to review the Mental Health Act?
The Mental Health Act review is something that we're engaged, that we're aware of, and that we know we need to do. However, the specific issue of amending the act with specific reference to street dwellers is not something that has been considered, for the simple reason that the mental health officers already have the capacity under the act to do what is being asked to be done. And the issue before us, as I understand it, is the availability of those officers in certain communities to respond quickly, because of their other responsibilities in other places at the same time, so that the decentralization plan speaks to that need.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Otalo, but I think we would need further clarification. So the committee may write you, and to finally, let us move on to the Port of Spain. But before we move on, Dr. Otalo, thank you very much for your contribution. Ms. Lewis, Ms. Connell, we appreciate all that you do, and thank you for being of service. And we will move on to the Port of Spain City Corporation. I know that Member Ford, MP Fortuno Puno, would love to start us off. Member Ford. Until Member Ford is ready, I would like to ask about the Move Along campaign. Madam CEO.
Well, again, with regard to the Move Along campaign, I know that it's ongoing. However, Superintendent Charles did indicate in submissions that is a problem with regard to accommodation of those persons. I will have Superintendent Charles expand on this information.
Madam Chair, good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning, sir.
Before we move on, I just want to go back to a previous item that we dealt with just now, in terms of training for the municipal police officers in the area in discipline of mental health. Again, I would like to re-ask the question in terms of when that training took place, how much officers were trained, and whether it was TDPS officers alone, it involved municipal police officers. Because I have.
Are you speaking, Superintendent Charles? I know that you're in charge of the municipal officers and you have been there for quite some time, so you should be aware, correct?
Yes, I have 33 years service. I'm doing that 33 years service, ma'am. I don't recall any such training. In addition to that, my training at the police academy was the same training where I was fortunate one of the officers to train alongside the DPS, and that was nowhere part of the training. I have since also contacted Senior Superintendent Belfort, who is in charge of our training. I cannot recall any such training either. So I'm puzzled at this stage, ma'am.
Okay, so Dr. Otalo, we would need some clarification regarding that. If it is the municipal police is indeed part of it, and Senior Superintendent Charles is one of our more senior officers in the municipal police, and I think he would know. And if the training was indeed for them or just the TTPS, and I guess we will be joining with the TTPS shortly so we can all clarify that. Okay, Dr. Otello, we would need that.
Yes, I can't recall if municipal police.
Dr. Otello, I can answer. The training was in 2018. It was a 6-day training through the police academy. It was a TTPS. It did not include municipal police, but we will provide some further details on dates and content of that training.
I think what we have to note that in anything to do with us moving forward, the municipal police will have a very important role to play because they're an integral part of local government and they will also provide the necessary support. Thank you, Superintendent Charles. Can we move on to the Move Along campaign, please? Thank you for the clarification.
Ma'am, in respect to the Move Along policy, the corporation have since instituted a Move Along policy. However, we as police officers have to be guided within the presence of the law and have to be work within the parameters of the law. Now, our role as police officers in respect to the Mental Health Act is more supportive. We have to be careful how we engage in persons of who we consider homeless, in the sense that these persons and they might become violent. And it will be very important and crucial at that stage and critical that we have a mental health officer present to assist to conduct that assessment and give the proper recommendations in terms of where institution that person shall be conveyed to. In addition, the mental health speak about the psychiatric facility. Right, what we have down at the CSDT, sorry, is that we have our assessment center set up here, but without the assistance of the mental health officers, we as police officers get just more persuasion in the sense of getting the people off the streets to go to the system to get properly assessed, sorry. In addition to that, what we have people from all over the country, you know, that in terms of charity and they came into Port of Spain and they tell us that they're doing good by feeding the people. So the people don't really stay at that institution. They tend to venture in the streets where they can get some meals, and that contributes in terms of, you know, that the effort of the police officers to get them off the street. But we really need a little more stringent and a little more prudent approach from the mental health officer in terms of assisting us in performing our daily function in terms of treating with these homeless persons.
Senior Superintendent Charles, could you tell the committee if there was any success at all with the Move Along campaign?
I will say little, ma'am. I will say little because, as I say, what happens is we don't have a proper structure in place at the center down there in terms of when the people reach here. For instance, when they reach here now in terms of food and little pocket change, right? And this was mentioned before by one of the persons making a contribution, is that on the streets they find people and more so Christmas and you know, a little charity might give them a little $5 or $10. So at the end of the day, when they do check up all the little 5 and 10 and the little small pocket change they get, it might tally to a substantial amount. Plus they'll be getting more food and you know they feel more welcome on the streets. So this is something that you know we need to more engagement with the stakeholders, and probably you know we can have like this center, one place by the center that they could come and distribute their food and their gift to those persons. But they're more the benefits that they arrive from on the streets tend to override and tend to encourage them to be more on the streets and to go down to the homeless center.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam CEO. In the past, has the corporation collaborated with the relevant ministries to treat with these challenges in order to address the problem of street dwelling in Port of Spain?
Chairman, in the past, the corporation has been collaborating continuously with informing the ministry of the challenges, and it's a work in progress between the Ministry of Social Development and the Port of Spain Corporation.
Can I ask if you have requested from the various ministries the necessary training for your municipal police officers in helping to deal with this issue?
Yes, we did.
All right, so
from Ministry of Social Development and Ministry of Health.
okay. Given that you submitted that persons in charge at the CSDP have been collecting money from homeless persons and the families to accommodate them, did you formally alert the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services about your findings?
At this point in time, I haven't seen any document where we have alerted the Ministry of Social Development of these findings. However, this is based on investigations on the Municipal Police Department. And I will also allow Superintendent Charles to contribute to this question.
Madam Chair, what happened in the past, we received several complaints in terms of these allegations. However, when the officers went to investigate, the person did confirm but they were reluctant to give any statement going forward in fear of being victimized. So therefore, that kind of put a pause on the investigation. But however, we have been monitoring the situation, and we the investigation not stop is something that is keep on going. But again, in terms of getting the people to come forward to give a written statement, they have been reluctant in terms of victimization, fear of victimization.
Thank you, and I would just like to congratulate you, Superintendent Charles, on taking the initiative to look into this, because this is very disturbing, and again, taxpayers' money involved. So I hope that the investigation will continue and yield more results. Okay, Madam CEO, I would hope that it will not just be at this Joint Select Committee, but you will write the Ministry of Social Development, PS, and formally inform them of your findings, please.
Chair, I will.
All right. Is there any initiative to increase the cohort of the municipal police to effectively engage street dwellers in collaboration with the mental health officers? Now I will ask Dr. Otello, as well as you, Madam CEO, to just give me the feedback from both entities.
Chair, I know currently we are staffed at 200 police officers. Some of them are on training, some are on sick leave, and Superintendent Charles could expand whether we will be getting additional officers. I'm not sure.
Ma'am, to the chair, we have a final batch of police officers who will comprise about 70 male officers. These officers are supposed to undergo training in about a month or two. They're supposed to start off training. So that will bring up the department to a full complement, which is our sanction strength of 200. Presently, what we have right now is all the officers who are assigned to the streets do engage in that exercise in engaging the street dwellers and trying to get them off the street. So having, like you say, in a matter of next 5 months, 5 to 6 months, when the department comes to our full complement, we'll be in a better position to really treat with these homeless persons by the fact that we have the assistance of the mental health officers and the necessary requisite training.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Member Thompson Ahi if she has any questions, as well as Member Ford.
I've been hearing the Port of Spain City Corporation. I've read their cries for help, lack of resources, lack of relevant training, public interference, no suitable equipment, lack of space in institutions. And I've heard them being advised to go to the ministry and, so these problems have been existing for some time. The elephant in the room for me, though, is where is the mayor in all of this? I would imagine that since you have a very proactive mayor with lots of ideas, is it that you have been ignoring him? Have you not been bringing all of your hardship and all of your problems to him? Because, we've read of some of his plans and they don't seem to, and his concern about the street dwellers. But these things that are coming out here this morning, that has not formed part of the dialogue, or part of the public campaign. So I'm asking, where is the mayor in all of this?
Chair, when we got this invitation, we were asked to invite two persons. So I invited a member of the Public Health Department and a member of the Police Department. But I know the mayor is having some mediation discussions with regard to an assessment center. And I would like to take the opportunity at this time to inform that with regard to the lack of resources, there has been a significant improvement at the Policy Corporation. We have received finances to assist with the PPE, and with regard to the vehicle to transport homeless persons, dialogue has been going on with the Policy Corporation and the Ministry of Social Development, whereby we are at present providing information with regard to the specifications required for a homeless person vehicle.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Member Ford.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Good to see you, Miss Seaford. Remembered you from my Tunapuna days, 2010 to 2015. All right. Simple question. In terms of your municipal police allocation, in terms of the numbers, having to see about the Port of Spain City, because I know each municipality would have received increases in their manpower resources with regards to the municipal police. And in terms of your manpower allocations as it relates to assisting the scenario we have with the street dwellers at these various sites, the various squares, the various parks, the streets on the whole. Are you comfortable with your allocation with regards to that particular aspect, or do you think that you can do it more, or your resources, transportation, vehicles, office space? Give us a little picture. Give us a little picture on what's happening at your corporation with regards to your manpower allocation, and it relates to ensuring that we can, go and see about these dwellers. We would hear of complaints, right? The minister, the chairman of the committee mentioned about this particular individual that she sees regularly. Tell us something. What do you need? What can be improved, as we go along? Thank you.
So, Chair, there has been a great improvement with regard to allocation from municipal police. I'm going to start off with that, because since last financial year, there was some additional votes for municipal police station, municipal equipment, and vehicles. So apart from utilizing the normal resources of the Police Corporation, these votes has been added on by the Ministry of Finance. This year, we were able to get an additional allocation, which was significant. However, the corporation would require additional funding, but we can work with what we have at this time. With regard to accommodation, there is some challenge in that area, because we had from the allocation for the city police. However, when an assessment was done, the accommodation wasn't a suitable building to house the officers, and we are still in a position where we don't have a building. Although the ministry is in constant dialogue with us, and we hope very soon that the police will get the required accommodation that they need. Superintendent Charles had informed me that he would require at least 100 additional police officers to be able to provide required services to all the city of Port of Spain.
What's your present allocation of officers, please?
At present, there are 200 officers assigned to the corporation, but Superintendent Charles will be able to expand where these officers are. I know some of them are on sick leave, some are on training. So the present cadre is 136 officers, and Superintendent Charles can.
To the chair, if I get after what Ma'am said, presently our sanction figure is 200 officers. We don't have 200 officers right now. We had over about 146 officers. Out of the 146 officers, we had a situation arrive at the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, where we have to loan 31 officers to that said ministry. So that have since impacted in our actual strength. So we have over about maybe close about 121, somewhere about 180 to 121 officers right now is our actual strength. And the boundaries of the city is very wide because we deal from before the central market, that's by the Tamran Tree, straight down to Westmoreland and certain part of St. Anne's and Lavendale. And to really effectively police the city and demands each day, we'll need additional 100 officers to ensure that we perform in that effectively.
If I may, with the closing of the parks and so on, have you found that COVID-19, has resulted in some savings to the corporation? Because with the parks being closed and all those things, there's less resources to be expended in cleaning them and monitoring the use and that sort of thing. Has there been any savings at all?
Ma'am, from the police perspective, we still have to patrol the parks and them on a daily basis to ensure that the corporation assets, some of the parks have assets, some of them have offices to ensure that they stay intact. We also ensure that sometimes some of the parks open for some events. You have to show the social distancing and public health regulation. From the police perspective, nothing has changed, ma'am. We
no, but other perspective.
Patrols day and night.
Other perspective, not police. Remember, I talk about cleaning and all that. So
there has been some minimal savings in some areas. But from time to time, the parks are still reopened, like the Barnard Promenade is reopened for a certain time, Woodford Square. As according to how the government locked down, we opened parks to suit. So the parks
you're planning to put up the Christmas tree again this year?
The Christmas tree is a joint effort this year with the Downtown Business Association.
All right, not as expensive, but a Christmas tree. Yes? Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing it.
Madam Chair, may I? Hold a sec.
All right, as member Ford.
We can't hold a sec.
Yeah,
Right.
Madam Chair, that's to follow up with my colleague Senator there. Yes, with regard to the park. So again, Woodford Square, right? Those persons that basically would utilize there, where have they migrated to? You all have an idea of where they may have migrated to presently? Yes. Superintendent? Through you, Chair?
Chair, those persons are still in person loitering. They are all over. They have migrated to Frederick Street and other surrounding areas in the city of Portsmouth.
And I would presume that your superintendent would be and his staff would be monitoring and ensuring that no problem arise as a result of within the public sphere, in terms of social distancing, in terms of interference, in terms of whatever. You all know it than we do.
To the chair, we are constantly treated with addressing this problem, this item we spoke about in our daily patrol. Officers are briefed before they go out there, and when they come back, we have a debriefing. So we do monitor the situation in terms of a foot on mobile patrol day and night to ensure that the safety of the persons and them that visit and use the city and the businesses, and also the business community is safe from these people and that are affected by these people's presence, right? We try to initiate the move along policy, and as far as possible, get them down to the homeless center to see how best we can get them off the street to create that environment of cleanliness and safety and so on, that reflect a city is supposed to reflect.
Not only the business people, because I know about walking down Frederick Street and getting lashed on my hand. You know, so we have to look out for the people too who walk the streets of Port of Spain to keep us safe, yes?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you very much, members. Thank you very much to the CEO of the Port of Spain City Corporation, Ms. Seaford. And thank you very much, Senior Superintendent Charles, as well as your Senior Health Officer. And we're moving on to the TTPS. And I do want to say one last thing, Madam CEO. Port of Spain is supposed to be the jewel of Trinidad and Tobago. And we really hope that we will have more of a collaborative approach to give you the support that is needed in order to make sure that the socially displaced are seen about in a humane and compassionate manner. I remember very, very long ago, mayors would pick up the socially displaced and send it to other boroughs and cities, and somehow they will always make their way back home. So let us make sure that we work together and achieve some semblance of peace and order in this matter. So we're moving on to the TTPS. Acting Commissioner Cooper, thank you very much for you and your team this morning. We would like to discuss in particular, in your submission, your brief submission, the officers received training in customer service and customer service representatives, interacting with persons with mental illnesses, mental health awareness for law enforcement, and interacting with special interest groups in society. Page 8. So we would like to know, do all officers receive this training?
Good afternoon again, through the chair. Yes, this is an ongoing training that we have for customer service. This is something we have as part of our curriculum at the police academy. So it is an ongoing training, yes.
Is this a training that is constantly touched upon? For example, every 2 years, you would have to go back and just refresh yourself. Is that offered as a refresher?
If need be, because what happened, officers are constantly being trained. And sometimes, officers that were already trained may undertake, training again, may have to go through training again as part of a, like, for instance, you may have a program running and one aspect of the program may be customer service. So of course, we have training and retraining, yes.
With regards to, does any aspect of this particular training teach officers specifically to how to interact directly with the socially displaced?
Yes, of course, because I am sure that, through the chair, I am sure that persons who are here today, would have recognized that on television, you will have seen officers interacting with socially displaced persons. More so during the COVID time, we were giving out masks to them. We even had projects where we were offering them clothing, food, groceries. Recently there, we had one coming out with the persons just at the displacement center at Riverside Plaza there, where they were assisting the persons with food, giving them actual groceries and clothing, and we were assisted by NGOs, and the community police took up that project, and that applies through all our different divisions, our community police departments. Yeah, they undertake to deal with these people and them who are homeless.
Assistant Commissioner, have you ever considered peer-to-peer training, assisting the municipal police officers, seeing that you all seemingly have a very good handle on the socially displaced interactions, the customer service aspect?
I am not, through the chair, I am not sure if the municipal police officers are given the particular training with respect to customer service as it relates to the dealing with the mental health persons, as was said by one of the persons on the committee here. We did receive a 6-day training, and it is something our academy is working on to allow it to be part of the curriculum, but it has not rolled out as yet because of the situation, the present climate. So it's something that it is to be worked on, but it's not part of the curriculum as yet in dealing with these mental health persons.
Assistant Commissioner, I'm also asking because in the past we have seen where a mentally ill person would have been killed by a police officer because of violent interaction. And then you would see the family members, of course, always after the fact, even though they would be the ones to call the police in the very first instance, saying that how the police didn't have any rights, the police weren't supposed to shoot him. Could you let the committee know, right? If training for officers in dealing with volatile situations with the socially displaced, is that taking place currently?
Through the chair, of course, we have ongoing training that is part of our whole program, and not just officers who just brought into our TTPS family, but there's ongoing training with different departments and sections with respect to dealing with volatile situations. Of course, we will have unfortunate situations, right, which we would not know beforehand, but we try to treat, with all situations, using our policies which are afforded to us. And, from time to time, we would have situations where, it would not be, a smooth transition.
I know that we asked the municipal police with regards to PPE. Could you just give us a feedback from your perspective also, your personal protection equipment?
Okay, well, what has been happening, we have since acquired taser and also pepper sprays, right? We also use the, just the communication aspect of it to speak to the person. If at that point in time, they are not willing to, to cooperate with the police officers, then we resort to a different level of dealing with them by using our, our tasers or our pepper spray to bring them down. And recently there, you all would have seen something on television. It occurred in Southern Division where a mentally, ill person had to be subdued by one of the officers, right, to protect him from himself. So we do assist persons no matter, their status in life, no matter their, their position. Right. So, yes.
Thank you so very much. Members of the committee, do you have any further questions for the Assistant Commissioner and her team?
If I may. Yes.
Yes, Member Thompson.
Yes. I have a couple of suggestions, if I may, Madam Chair. First of all, the term customer service, it doesn't sit well with me at all. I would prefer, it gives me the idea that you're selling something. I think I prefer, in fact, I'm sure I prefer something like citizen service. So you're serving the citizens of this country. Rather than customer, gives a different kind of connotation. And I would also like to suggest that you pull people through the assistance of the commissioner or someone from every single division for training in this particular area of interacting with persons with mental illness. So every division would be able to identify a couple of officers, a few officers who immediately you train And when a report comes to the station, these are the people who would be immediately deployed to deal with that situation. I'm sure that will go a long way in obviating this recurrent situation of people being shot, by the police. It may be unusual instead of going through, like every time you have a cadre of police officers being trained, you train that one. You train those other people. But right now, there's an immediate problem. So forget your academy for maybe a little while and go straight into pulling people from all the divisions and train them immediately. That 6-week training. You go, then you take another cadre and so on. And you probably can do that alongside training your new officers. But we can't really wait because there are people in the service now who need the training in every single division. So that's my humble suggestion for what it's worth. But I'm really concerned about too many people are crying out because their loved one who were ill are killed because the situation was not handled properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Thompson-Ahi, and really very valuable information. And I hope it reaches the right ears. I think I saw Member Ford. Do you have a question for the TTPS?
Again, they would. My main concern is the special training that may be needed in order to deal with these particular individuals, especially remember they are street dwellers, one. Secondly, some of them may be mentally disturbed, right? So I think, there would be some sort of, precaution, some sort of, I don't know, delicate is probably the correct word in order to deal with these guys. But then keeping in mind that, again, the officers need to ensure that they are protected also. The PPE is also important with regards to these particular officers in dealing with these individuals. And then the PPE, especially in light of we are now in a COVID-19 pandemic, right? So again, with that in mind, Assistant Commissioner, through you, Chair, could you shed some light on how they are handling these aspects, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic presently?
Yes, sir. Through you, Chair, police officers do engage street dwellers and other persons during arrest. We ensure that our police officers do have their appropriate PPE. Sometimes not adequate, but we tend to use it to our maximum use to ensure that the police officers themselves protect themselves and also to treat the arrested persons humanly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for clearing up that for me. Member Ford, do you have anything else you would like to add? You're still muted, member.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm okay now, Chairman. Madam Chair.
Well, I would like to thank the TTPS. Thank you to the Assistant Commissioner, Ms. Cooper, and her team for their contributions this morning. But I think we can all see, as Member Thompson-Ahi pointed out, we need more of a collaborative effort with regards to the mental health and dealing with the mentally ill in a sensitive manner. I would like to thank all the officials today for your very valuable contributions, the committee members who all participated remotely for this virtual hearing, the staff of the Office of the Parliament for the procedural and logistical support, and the viewing and listening audience, especially those of you who sent in questions. Thank you very much, and we may have to reconvene very soon because this is definitely extremely important for us to move on together for our society. Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.
Yeah.
Members, please hold on
Madam
for.
Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
Members, you please hold on for our in-camera meeting.